This week on ANN, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Bavaria responds to a fatal train crash.
The denomination's liaison to the United Nations expresses condolence for the death of former UN Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali.
And Adventist humanitarians serve more than 700 people through a free dental clinic.
These stories and more coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church.
Thank you so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, in response to a train crash in the city of Bad Aibling that killed 11 people and injured more than 80, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Bavaria, Germany issued a statement of condolences for the victims and affected families. The accident involved a head-on collision of two trains on a single-line track 40 miles southeast of Munich. According to investigators, the accident was a result of a, quote, human error. The Seventh-day Adventist Church in Bavaria issued a statement saying, quote, "We share in the pain of the relatives and pray that God will give them comfort," end quote. Wolfgang Dorn, president of the Adventist Church in the territory, expressed his personal sympathies when he said, quote, "I trust that the relatives of the victims will find the support they need to live with this terrible reality that has separated them from their loved ones. I grieve with them. We also pray for the many injured and hope in a fast recovery." Church leaders in the region also agreed to offer assistance to all those who have been affected by the accident.
On Tuesday, February 16, Boutros Boutros-Ghali, former Secretary General of the United Nations who served from 1992 to 1996, passed away after he was admitted to a hospital in Cairo for a broken pelvis. In response to this death, Nelu Borja, United Nations liaison for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, issued a statement of condolences on behalf of the denomination. Borja said, quote, "His tenure at the United Nations during the turbulent post-Cold War years was made even more challenging by the shifting alliances and the changing power dynamics of a newly fragmented international community. But regardless of the many and varied critiques of his 5-year term as Secretary General, I believe Dr. Boutros-Ghali was driven by a desire for the United Nations to be, in his own words, a voice for the weakest and least regarded peoples." Visit news.adventist.org to read the full statement.
Thanks to the efforts of the Adventist Development and Relief Agency in Madagascar, hundreds of people within the nation's Bakinan-Karatra region received free dental care through a mobile clinic. The mobile dental clinic was created to offer services to residents in rural communities that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. The clinic was supported by the humanitarian organization International Caring Hands and transported to the nation by ADRA International. So far, dental professionals have served more than 750 people, mostly with tooth extractions. The lines grew daily when word spread that the procedures offered by the clinic were virtually pain-free. The mayor of one of the villages that was visited by the clinic thanked ADRA for giving residents the ability to live and work without dental pain. After ADRA concludes its time with the clinic, a full team of local dentists and staff have agreed to keep the clinic operating so rural communities in the region will continue to have access to free dental care.
A team of volunteers from across the Caribbean have dedicated 1-week terms to help ADRA Dominica rebuild the nation after last year's tropical storm Erica. The storm, which struck Dominica last August, ripped through the island and left hundreds of residents homeless. In response to the current need for housing, the Adventist Humanitarian Agency is following through on its commitment to assist the government with the nation's recovery. As the government offers land and infrastructure, ADRA is providing labor and funds to create housing for some of the 373 affected families. So far, ADRA, along with its volunteers, has begun the construction of 3 3-bedroom homes and 5 2-bedroom homes. 3 homes are expected to be finished by April, and another 5 will be completed by July. According to Henry Peters, Community Services Director for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Northern Caribbean, many of the volunteers were born in Dominica and view their efforts as personal contributions to the nation which nurtured them. Leaders from ADRA Dominica hope the agency will be able to oversee the completion of 25 houses by the end of the year.
According to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the most significant scientific breakthrough of 2015 was the development of a specific DNA editing technique. The church's Geoscience Research Institute shares how the findings surrounding the technique support the belief of intelligent design.
Imagine a world in which genetic information within any organism's cells can be directly edited. This would allow the correction of disease-causing DNA errors and creation of new, more productive crops. Any process that allows direct gene editing has undeniable potential. And today, we do not have to imagine it. We actually live in a world where humans have this technology. The American Association for the Advancement of Science has recognized a new gene editing technique as the most significant scientific breakthrough of 2015. It may well be the scientific breakthrough of the decade. Why is CRISPR-Cas9 relevant to our understanding of origins? Its importance signals recognition of an observed limit to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. In Darwin's theory, natural selection is credited with creating almost limitless varieties of organisms. But in real life, selection, in other words, plant breeders may select for a trait such as corn kernel size and produce varieties of corn with larger kernels. But artificial selection doesn't produce watermelon-sized corn kernels, no matter how enthusiastically and brilliantly it's done. If selection could do what Darwin claimed, there would be no need to directly engineer organisms' genes. Nature would create new genes all by itself. We would only have to patiently select varieties with the genes we want. CRISPR-Cas9, along with other genome engineering techniques, is a recognition that if we want to see new functions in a genome, we need to intelligently engineer them in. Unique genes are commonly found in different kinds of organisms. These point to genetic engineering even more elegant than is possible with CRISPR-Cas9. The inventors of CRISPR-Cas9 technology will be widely lauded for their brilliance, and rightly so. As Christians, we recognize and worship a much greater brilliance, the creator of all the original information engineered into organisms' genomes.
Nearly 130 representatives from agencies of the United Nations and faith communities discussed the role of religion and faith-based groups in international affairs earlier this month during a symposium held at the UN headquarters in the U.S. state of New York. Ganoon Diop, Director of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, was one of the keynote presenters for the event. During his address, he challenged what he called the simplistic generalization that religion and religious faith should bear the blame for driving extremist violence. Drawing on both history and theology, Diop explored what he called a multifaceted, complex phenomenon, and he traced a strong connection between a person's understanding of God and how they relate to other human beings. Other presenters at the symposium included Adama Dieng, the UN Secretary General's Special Advisor for the Prevention of Genocide, Zainab Hawa Bangura, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, and Dr. John Esposito, Professor of Religion and International Affairs at Georgetown University. The Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was one of 3 organizers of the symposium, which was co-sponsored by the UN Interagency Task Force for Engagement with Faith-Based Organizations.
Coming up, learn about a sewing center in India that's making a positive impact in its surrounding community.
But up next, learn about Greek translations for the writings of one of the denomination's co-founders.
We were a group of women outside the city gate by the river at a place of prayer. Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth from Thyatira, was also there. 2 men came along and started to speak to us and asked to join us in prayer. We later learned that they were Paul and Silas. The Lord opened Lydia's heart to heed Paul's message. She and all the members of her household were baptized. Another day, Paul and Silas were on their way to a place of prayer. They were met by a female slave who had a spirit in her that could predict the future. She earned a lot of money for her owners by fortune-telling. She followed us and shouted at us. This was disrupting, and so Paul ordered the spirit out of her. When her owners realized that their chance of making money was gone, they dragged Paul and Silas to the authorities, and they were put in prison.
At around midnight, these two very positive prisoners named Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. The rest of us were listening to them. Suddenly there was a violent earthquake and the prison shook. All the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, saw all the doors open and drew his sword to kill himself. He thought all the prisoners had escaped, but Paul assured him and shouted that he should not harm himself. The jailer called for lights, rushed in and lay in front of them, trembling. The jailer accepted Jesus Christ, and his whole family was baptized.
Welcome back, and now we have more news from our global church community.
During last week's segment of This Week in Adventist History, David Trim, chief archivist for the denomination, paid tribute to Eli Economou, who was a religion professor at Andrews University in the mid-20th century. Economou, who is fluent in 6 languages, is most known for translating the work of Ellen G. White into the Greek language. Economou translated 18 books by the co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in her spare time, because Adventist publishing houses at the time thought there wasn't a market for the author's work in Greek. We here at ANN were recently made aware that Greek translations of Ellen White's writings by Eli Economou are still available and free of charge. I sat down with Benjamin Baker, managing editor for the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, for more. Thanks so much for joining us, Benjamin. For those who may have missed last week's episode, can you briefly tell us a little bit about Eli Economou?
Sure. Eli Economou was born in 1928 in the biblical city of Thessalonica, where Paul wrote the letters to the believers in Thessalonica. She converted to Adventism at age 13 from reading The Great Controversy. And it was at this age that she developed a love for the writings of Ellen G. White. But because she was a part of a Greek Orthodox family, her father wouldn't permit her to be baptized until she was 21. Well, she was baptized, and after World War II, she immigrated to the United States. She studied at Pacific Union College and then went on to teach at Andrews University. She was fluent in 5 languages, and so she was an amazing linguist. And all in all, she taught at Andrews for over 3 decades. One of the most significant things she did in her life was translate 18 Spirit of Prophecy books, 18 of Ellen White's titles, into Greek. And at the time, because the publishing houses didn't think that it would be profitable to print them, Economou financed the publication and the printing of the books herself.
Wow.
And since then, thousands have been sold by literature evangelists in Greece and Cyprus.
And we know that people can actually get these books in Greek if they want them, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We have about 20 pallets of her books. And like I said, they are still being sent to literature evangelists in Greece. But if the viewers would like a copy, they just need to pay shipping. They can contact the GC Archives at archives@gc.adventist.org. And we can arrange to send you some of the Greek translated books.
Great. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Through sewing classes in India, Adventist women have created a center of influence to reach community members with the gospel. Paul Charles, Communication Director for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Southern Africa, Indian Ocean region, sent this report from his travels.
India is a very diverse country. People don't come on their own to hear the gospel. God is using godly women to take the gospel to the people through creative ways of meeting them where they are. In this way, our buildings are becoming centers of influence. You see these buildings? We don't know who are in these buildings who are living, but we have to reach those people. The aim of the project Doorpost Tailoring Institute is reach out to the people here. Many ladies are sitting at home. So because of this institute, they slowly come out and checking what is here going on.
I am very thankful for this project, and I am very thankful to God also that He cares for me.
Because of this program, the ladies are coming here for not only for stitching, they are learning how to stitch, and through this we are introducing our faith and God to them. Through this institution, God blessed me. God blessed my family life also. God blessed my family, increased the family income.
In the Brazilian state of Bahia, a state of emergency was declared in the municipality of Congi as a result of major flooding. More than 1,000 residents in the coastal territory have been displaced due to damage from heavy rain that caused the local river to flood. Those seeking shelter are taking refuge in public schools the government has temporarily transformed into emergency housing. Residents are using small boats to navigate the water-filled streets throughout the municipality. In response to the natural disaster, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency in Bahia started its distribution of nearly 700 hygiene kits for affected families. Each kit contains 45 items, including toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, toilet paper, and shampoo. ADRA Bahia Regional Manager Luis Fernando shared how the agency is working to address the needs for as many people as possible. He said, quote, "We started this emergency action and we are expanding contact with churches and other institutions to draw attention to this reality of the inhabitants of Congi and seek ways to help them in the best way."
The number of migrants and refugees traveling through Europe has reached approximately 60 million. While many members, local churches, and various regional ADRA offices have answered the call to serve the traveling refugees, the CEO of ADRA in the United Kingdom recently took the opportunity to examine how the Adventist Church in the UK is responding to the crisis. During Bert Smith's diversity lecture at Newbold College, Smith discussed the following questions. How are Seventh-day Adventists in the UK responding to the refugee crisis in Europe? And what issues do the fundraising figures from ADRA UK show about attitudes to the needs of migrants, refugees, and other victims of war and disaster? Smith said, throughout history, the Adventist Church has embodied various models of following Jesus' command to love your neighbor. However, donated funds within the UK for the migrant crisis have been drastically less than other international crises, including the 2010 earthquake in Haiti and last year's Ebola crisis in West Africa. According to Smith, the church sees the migrants as an opportunity for evangelism, but he asked, quote, "Does the church accept that it has to play an active role for those in our community, the down and outs, the homeless, refugees," end quote. He ended his lecture with the following statement, quote, "Do we want to create a better world here as we wait for a better world to come?"
And finally in the news this week, an op shop or thrift store operated by the Adventist Development and Relief Agency in Western Australia recently reached a fundraising milestone. The store, which in 1990 started out as a small room in a church foyer, passed its $1 million Australian dollar sales goal. ADRA volunteers Bob and Dawn Blizzard, who started the shop, attribute its success to prayer and support for its local church community. The shop brings in more than 100,000 Australian dollars a year that directly funds both local and international ADRA projects.
Coming up, learn about an anticipated update for Instagram.
But up next, learn how drinking water can benefit your heart.
In high school, we had a recital one year. Teenage musicians, they were already pretty good at what they did. There was one musician, though, that struggled from the beginning. His fingers stumbled and they were all on top of each other. You could see his frustration building until one point he just lifted both of his hands and dropped them, pounded on the keyboard. It's like we heard every note all at the same time. The music teacher joined the student on the stage. He said to him, "You know, sometimes we just need a do-over. We need to start fresh." One way of thinking about baptism is a fresh start. Baptism acknowledges where I am, but it announces where I'm going. It's a priority to live life with God, no matter where I've been, what I've done, what I've thought about doing. Baptism isn't to make us perfect. It's to announce a priority to live first with God. Even though that recital was long ago, I'll always remember because the teacher walked off the stage with the student and entered again and sat down beside him. The teacher said to the student, "Now start over, and I'll stay right here with you." And what we heard was simply beautiful.
According to a new American Heart Association scientific statement, having a pet might lower your risk of heart disease. A review of previous studies on the influence of pets on human health found that pet owners tend to have lower blood pressure and cholesterol levels, stress, and incidence of obesity. One study of over 5,200 adults showed that dog owners were 54% more likely to reach recommended levels of physical activity. That's a fact. But there's hope. As you consider your leisure time activities, think about the loving relationship you have with your dog. Not only can pets pull at your heartstrings, but they improve your heart health so you will live a longer and happier life.
Welcome back. Did you know that drinking at least 5 glasses of water a day can reduce your chance of having a heart attack? Learn more during this week's episode of Live It.
To learn more about Live It, Loma Linda University Health's new online health show, and watch past episodes, visit liveitlomalinda.org.
Think about how much water you drink in a typical day.
Would you drink more water if you knew it would reduce your risk of heart disease by half?
About 40% of people in this country die of cardiovascular disease. So it is a serious disease that develops over many, many years. And the good news is it is preventable.
Heart disease is caused when any blockage in your arteries keeps the heart from receiving enough blood.
The buildup of plaque can result from risk factors like smoking, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure.
This Loma Linda University health study followed 34,000 Californians over 15 years.
Both men and women who drank 5 or more glasses of water per day had about half the risk of dying of coronary heart disease.
And that's the simple tip for the day.
Drink at least 5 glasses of water every day to lower your risk for heart disease.
You can spice it up with some lemon, lime, or orange slices.
Herbal teas without sugar have also shown a similar effect on lowering your risk of heart disease.
But remember, drinks like juice and soda are high in sugar and won't give us the benefit of lowering your risk of heart disease.
There's your simple tip for the day on how you can live healthier longer.
For this week's social media report, Angela Taipei discusses one of Instagram's recent updates that allows users to switch between accounts on their smartphones.
The biggest social media news this week comes from Instagram. Up until now, those who ran multiple accounts had to log out and log back in again in order to switch between an organizational account they manage and their own personal account. Recently, the photo sharing app announced the long-awaited update, allowing users to quickly and easily switch between accounts. To add your additional accounts that you may contribute to, click on the gear at the top of your account's page. Scroll to the bottom and click Add Account. Once you've entered the username and password, an icon will appear at the bottom of the screen. A quick tap of the icon will take you back to your account page, but hold your finger on the icon for the accounts to pop up, and then it's just an easy switch. But don't let this easy switch trip you up by accident. If you help with an account for your church, youth group, or service organization, it's very important to always know what account you're logged into before you post. The same goes for Twitter and Facebook. You don't want to accidentally post your personal pictures to your church's account. So make it a habit, starting now, to double check the icon at the bottom of the screen before you go to take a picture. It might just keep you from making an embarrassing mistake.
And finally, for today's program, let's turn to Kenry Hilton for a look at Adventist history.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. This week, more than a century ago, early in the morning on February 18, 1902, the Battle Creek Sanitarium building and the hospital were consumed by fire. This was a pioneer Seventh-day Adventist medical institution located in Michigan, in which Seventh-day Adventist concepts of health and healing were given their first public demonstration. The cause of the disastrous fire was never determined, but it began in the sanitarium pharmacy and quickly spread. By daylight, the entire main building, the charity hospital, and several small adjacent buildings lay in ruins. The staff had safely evacuated all the 400 patients in the sanitarium, with the exception of one man who re-entered the building in an unsuccessful attempt to rescue his wallet, which was said to contain his life savings. The Battle Creek Sanitarium was owned, controlled, and operated by the Seventh-day Adventist Church from 1866 to 1908, when control of the institution was taken over by its medical director, John Harvey Kellogg. Also this week, on February 15, 1925, the Adventist College of Barranquilla opened its doors. Its first director was Mrs. Victoria Davila, a native of Guatemala. In 1960, the name was changed to Max Trumer College in honor of the pioneers of the Adventist Church in Colombia. It is currently known locally as Colegio Adventista del Atlántico Max Trumer. And that was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, join our global conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can connect with Adventists worldwide through more stories, photos, and videos. Visit Facebook/Adventist News, Twitter @Adventist Church, and Instagram @Adventist Church.
Our good news for this week comes from the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9. The passage said, "So let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up."
That's our program for this week, and remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.